So there's a new Big Think video out called Political Correctness Doesn't Censor, It Keeps Comedy Fresh, and Paul F. Tompkins, the comic putting forward his argument, left me thoroughly unimpressed. The title relates very little to the video, and his approach comes across as one big dodge, an active attempt to avoid the elephant in the room and little else. He can't even bring himself to say the words political correctness, which is meant to be what he's championing, and it's altogether quite a frustrating little speech. Let's watch the clip together, shall we?
I think you can make jokes about anything.
Care to guess what the next word he says will be?
But
Of course.
But you have to accept that there will be people who don't like it.
Yeah, true and fine. In fact, dear viewer, check this out. I keep hearing people unfairly call Islamic culture restrictive or oppressive, when the opposite is true. In fact, it's actually quite similar to the wild and free American counterculture of the 60s, just that, instead of acid leading to sex, Muslim women having sex leads to acid. Please write a comment under this video telling me why that little joke of mine sucks and is offensive.
And they are completely within their rights, just as you are completely within your rights to say whatever you want to say. They're within their rights to react how they're going to react.
Mate, I know you don't mean this, and probably aren't even thinking about it, but we live in a time where how people are going to react to the humour you put out there is sometimes to gun you down for offending them. You might want to be more specific when discussing the kinds of reactions people have to comedy when they don't like it.
So you can't be surprised or insulted if someone doesn't like a thing you said that is that you're making jokes on a controversial topic.
Okay, at this point I think it's clear that doesn't like is being used as a euphemism. Any kind of joke can fall flat and not be liked by people for any reason. You're going to have a hard time finding anyone arguing that's bad or wrong, unless they're a special snowflake who's pro-PC anyway.
I think there's a lot of people who court that, and they want that because it's attention. It gets more eyeballs on them and what they're doing.
Ah, right. So I guess when he talks about people not liking what's been said, he must mean people getting offended and protesting it, generally making a stink, which he's right, they're within their rights to do. And yeah, people absolutely do provoke that and use it to their advantage in order to draw attention, which I'd actually buy as an upside of PC culture, especially since things sometimes get funnier when people are offended, as Ricky Gervais has noted. However, that's not where he's going with this.
But there's some people who do feign outrage at this, or they're genuinely feeling like, how dare you tell me what I can and cannot joke about? But I would say in most cases, audiences are not telling them, you can't joke about this. What they are saying is, that wasn't funny. And that's a different thing.
Could he not have been a little bit more specific? Which people? Which audiences? What exactly is he talking about? When is this happening and being misunderstood? I'm not sure if he just doesn't have any examples in mind, or if he knows anything he brings up won't really fit his characterization of the overall situation. I've read some commenters under the video saying he sounds reasonable, what he says just doesn't fit the title and so on. And they're right, but only because the problem with the video isn't so much its content viewed in isolation, as it's that it's detached from the reality of the issue. What he says next is a good demonstration of this.
I think you can talk about any topic, and I think you can make any topic funny. It depends on what your point is and where you're coming from. Audiences always know. They always know. And if you have a sound point that you're making, and it's well thought out, and it's well crafted, you can make me laugh at a thing that I think is tragic. You can make me laugh at a thing that I think is horrific. You can make me laugh at a thing that affects me personally. But if you've done your homework and you've gone about it the right way, it will still be funny.
Sounds good on its own. You can joke about anything, but you have to do it right or it'll bomb. Isn't that how it works for all humor, even when it isn't controversial? There is a problem to be addressed, though.
But it's when people do, I think, a lazy job at something. They're not trying as hard as they could, or they really are just courting outrage. That's when audiences say, that wasn't funny. But I think it's so rare that anyone says you're not allowed to joke about that.
When this guy says audiences, it brings an image to my mind of a series of comedy club crowds, as if what he's talking about is jokes bombing and comedians being salty over it, using political correctness as an excuse, which could happen, probably has. And when he says it's rare that anyone says you're not allowed to joke about something, he's probably right on a grand scale. The kind of people who get behind the idea of jokes being the foundation of murder mustn't be that numerous, and they likely aren't going to go to your show or engage with whatever else you're doing. But they don't have to. Thanks to the magic of technology, if you try something out that might be a bit off colour, you could suddenly find that your audience is the world, and the sensorial, politically correct nut jobs who would otherwise be diluted by masses of people who aren't joyless freaks aren't so sparse on the internet, where they can organise. They can make a stink that media might pick up and run with even, just on the back of the commotion. Thinking about it, you'd better be careful, mate. Some people might interpret what's in your pocket as being a rape joke, and you could end up getting the same treatment as Dapper Laughs. Earlier, this guy mentioned things turning out fine if you do your homework first. But I'm reminded of an interview with Chris Rock I read a while ago. The interviewer was asking him about political correctness and brought up this exact issue. He asked, "Does it force you into some sort of self-censorship?" And Chris responded, "It does. I swear I just had a conversation with the people at the Comedy Cellar about how we can make cell phones into cigarettes. If you would have told me years ago that they were going to get rid of smoking in comedy clubs, I would have thought you were crazy." It is scary, because the thing about comedians is that you're the only ones who practice in front of a crowd. Prince doesn't run a demo on the radio, but in stand-up, the demo gets out. There are a few guys good enough to write a perfect act and get on stage, but everybody else workshops it, and it can get real messy. It can get downright offensive. Before everyone had a recording device and was wired like fucking Sammy the Bull, you'd say something that went too far and you'd go, "Oh, I went too far," and you would just brush it off. But if you think you don't have room to make mistakes, it's going to lead to safer, gooier stand-up. You can't think the thoughts you want to think if you think you're being watched. And improvisation and spontaneity, adopt political correctness, set yourself up to need to do your homework for all your jokes, and that completely dies. How can you do what this guy suggests in the space of seconds live? There will always be people who will be offended by something you say, and the odds have never been higher that they'll hear you somehow and go after you. Coming up with stuff in the moment is off the table if you want comedy to be done with great enough care that you don't come at something wrong.
Tastes change over the years. And so topics that were routinely joked about years ago that might affect certain people, maybe it's something that happened to someone, and we throw a word around because it's a shocking punchline and it's good for a laugh. But is it worth it?
Is it worth what? If someone says something like, if they truly wanted equality, all these progressive outlets will be supporting harassment of women. The gender suicide gap isn't going to close itself. What's the cost? Does he mean some people being offended, or does he mean what someone might try to do to you in revenge, or what?
And over time, people who are tired of being ashamed because a thing happened to them, they vote with their silence, or they say, "That's not funny."
All that silence. It's political correctness gone mad. What is he talking about? An example would have been really nice here. The only thing that comes to my mind is when feminist comedian Kate Smurthwaite had a gig scheduled at Goldsmiths Uni that was cancelled after being contested by a tribe of rival feminists and only selling 8 tickets. Is that the kind of silence he means?
And I think that comedians have to recognize that humor evolves and times change, and you can't stay stuck in the same place for too long, because then you're irrelevant.
Absolutely. I like it when comedians stay relevant. Too bad talking about so much of what's going on in the world today is considered un-PC and will get you shit on for even touching.
And so it's very easy to say, oh, people are too uptight now. They're too uptight. But the fact of the matter is, these people are the people of today. And you might be a person of yesterday if you can't adjust and you can't be in tune with what people think is funny anymore.
When are any of the uptight people of today he could be referring to ever more than a minority of noisy little shits? And hold up, first he said you can make a joke about anything and it will be funny if done right, which I agree with. Now he's talking about needing to be in tune with what people think is funny. Why bother being a comedian? Why bother having comedians? If people have a set list of things they think are funny or not, what are you doing? Just plug your iPod with some jokes loaded up into speakers. That way you won't make any mistakes and they'll get exactly the funnies they're comfortable with. I look at what's going on, and I read what comedians are saying and have said in the past. There's this change in the basic rules of the game that's always been pushed. Not just a little move in with the times deal like this guy's painting it. And it seems like it normally fizzles away each time it rears its head. But today it's pretty strong. I guess I'd describe it as an unwillingness to give people the benefit of the doubt when they're trying to be funny. I think it was a Jimmy Carr DVD I was watching where he said to the audience, "No, you don't get to laugh and then go." Some people have taken that on board, apparently, and decided to have their condemnation primed at all times to minimize risk of laughing first, even if they find something funny. That fucking sucks. This attitude that's around should be broken down and smashed into laughter, not catered to.
I don't think I've ever said anything where an audience turned on me in that way. I've said things that now I wish I hadn't said because times have changed. And like the me of 15, 20 years ago made a joke that I wouldn't make today because I look at the world differently now, you know, and because the world is different now. And, you know, it's all part of a maturation process, I think, for everybody. And I'm of the school that says adapt or die. You know?
This approach is otherwise known as being a beanbag chair.
And so if this is not a thing that we joke about anymore, I'm going to find something else to joke about.
Fuck me. Again.
And so if this is not a thing that we joke about anymore, I'm going to find something else to joke about.
Well, looks like they screwed up the title. To me, that sounds like self-censorship in a sentence.
Or I'm going to be better at handling these subjects so that people know what my intent is.
Okay, so that's the alternative to self-censorship just in case. But look at what he's worried about. His concern is over assumptions being made about his intent, not whether it's fucking funny or not. All he's doing is explaining how a comedian can be a pussy and work around all this bullshit. How to carry on with that unnecessary weight on your back. There's this amazing clip of Patrice O'Neill, the first thing I ever saw of him. I went back to watch it writing this script and holy shit. The guy in this video, Paul F. Tompkins, sounds just like...
You know, what's happening now is the marketplace is deciding what's appropriate or what's not appropriate. I think the nation is just tired. There's a new mood in the nation.
What nation?
The nation. You know what? We're tired of things that are just...
Is this the nation, this paper, and you? I'm not...
Right? Right? It's the same fucking thing. What's gone wrong? Why is a comedian on that side of this argument?
In
Do
this
you
country,
think they were trying to be funny?
Tired. You know what? I don't care if they're trying to be funny.
Why is a comedian siding with the new wave of people like this, who are even worse? It's exactly the same bullshit that's been thrown around for ages. Just today, it's coming out of a comedian's mouth. Listen to this.
They can go out and try to be as funny as they want, make as much money being as funny as they want. This is what's happening. There is a change in this country. People are realizing they have an opportunity to speak out.
I don't want to miss out on something funny and incredible because audiences are unwilling to cut any slack. If society's going that way for real this time, society's made a horrible mistake and needs a slap. Being allowed to joke about anything doesn't mean shit if there's a butt attached to the tune of losing your job or otherwise being ruined because it didn't sit well with a few people who don't even watch or listen or whatever to you anyway, because they think you were joking with intent to kill? Harm? Who fucking knows? That is stifling. Doing your homework isn't going to protect you from that. And if you do anything but ignore or attack it, it's going to be on your mind, and it's going to bog you down. At least a little. If you still nail jokes, it will be in spite of that. In spite of your efforts to play by some uptight dork's rulebook.
She has an entire encyclopedia of her stance on it, but it's no passion involved. It's not a real, this is just what she has to say. We are outraged and fired and fired and fired. Name calling. I'm outraged. I am outraged.
You should be outraged.
I am a fool. Now, if I called you a fool,
You know what? People are feeling a new sense of entitlement.
Who are these
to
people
decency in this country?
Who are the people?
It's the same kind of shit today, and it should get the same response today. It can only become a problem if everyone cowers and bows to it. But unfortunately, our friend here is encouraging that.
My intent is not to mock the victim here. It's not to mock the little person.
And please don't hurt me, I'm a good boy. Please believe me. You're the people of today. You know what's best. And I listen.
I'm ridiculing something that is worthy of ridicule, and that every word out of my mouth is worth saying. And, you know, just not to be cheap, I think, is a tiny thing, but it's kind of important.
Personally, I think preparing comedy for mass consumption with minimal risk is cheap, in a soulless, industrial kind of way. But that's just me, and who am I? If people don't like something, it will die out on its own because it's not found funny or enjoyable. True, but that's not what anyone's worried about. The problem is people do like stuff that the PC crowd finds unacceptable and gets outraged at.
A violent act of hitting her in the back of her head, her body.
It's called the donkey punch.
Which will then...
Why are you laughing? She's outraged.
There is the whole problem, laid out beautifully in a short clip from years ago. When we are talking about problems with political correctness, none of what happens is just your audience telling you that's not funny, unless maybe you're on a college campus facing a full congregation of these creeps. It's actually your audience being told off for finding it funny. The attack on you is just how that message gets seen. And the same thing's done with games and movies and music. If this wasn't the case, and things truly have vastly changed organically, it would be enough for the people of today to simply not support things and they'd go away. It wouldn't be recognized as PC culture, people just wouldn't be laughing, and subjects would get phased out. What the lady Patrice O'Neill was talking to tried to do, what so-called social justice warriors try to do, what certain parts of press are trying to do, and what even the comic in this Big Think video is trying to do, is create the illusion of a shift having happened that has not happened, but which they support or, at the very least, condone happening. A shift that will effectively restrict what people can talk about in a way that absolutely changes things for the worse. For comedy, for everyday conversation, for everything. Vocabulary will become more restricted. If you can't say it in comedy, you sure as fuck can't say it in day-to-day speech. Discourse will become more restrained. Thought will narrow. I do have hope for Paul Tompkins though. He is, of course, a professional and comes off well in what I've seen of him. Tons of people love him. Maybe he's just not thinking of what other people are thinking of when it comes to political correctness. It's hard to believe a comedian would be pro-PC if they mean what I mean. And, you see, I'm looking forward to him, you know, listening to his audience and adapting, as he says he's so keen to do. But, as usual, that's just another one of my harmful opinions.